Good morning, Bimblers. And you join me here in the fabulous North Wales again. To be exact, we're in Rhyl. And today we're doing something a little bit special that I'm calling the Denbighshire Coast Loop. And we're starting the loop here in Rhyl because I could never think of anything to say about Rhyl. Carol Vorderman was born here. But apart from that, anything historical about Rhyl has been knocked down and replaced. It's a great place to come for an ice cream and walk your dog on the beach. But there's nothing historical to talk about. However, if we go a little bit inland, there's lots of historical things to talk about. So I think we should bimble. Let's bimble. Behind me is the River Clewwood, and it's where the old county of Clewwood got its name. Denbighshire is actually the electoral ward as of 1996, but Clewwood is its ceremonial county. It's a little bit like Greater Manchester and Lancashire, and Merseyside and Lancashire, and Halton and Lancashire. Actually, Lancashire's getting mugged off, isn't it? The River Clewwood is 35 miles long, and it starts in Clogainog Forest, and it winds its way through until it gets to the seafront at Rhyl, and that's where we started today's bimble. We're actually sat at the confluence between the River Prestatyn and the River Clewwood, and we'll be mentioning the River Prestatyn later on. But this particular stretch of the Clewwood was straightened in 1277 by King Edward I, Big Longshanks, and he hired 968 men to straighten it so that barges could get to his new castle down there in Rudlin. Let's bimble.
washed in clean by a riverside. They told you the news. Kept so cold in the blackest tide. If only you knew. I've heard what they've said, ignored what I read, and looked to the bright side. So here's to the bad times, forgotten in good lights. I won't let you down. I'll take off my shoes and dance to the good news. Broken smiles, well, they will turn it round.
This is Woodland Castle, and it was built in 1277 by Big Longshanks, Edward I. And it was built at the outbreak of the First Welsh War, which is a bit of a stupid name for it if you ask me, because the English and the Welsh had been fighting for centuries before that. It was one of 17 castles that Edward I built. That would be Flint Castle, that we've bimbled to, and Conway Castle, that we've bimbled to, and 14 others that I promise we'll bimble to. The Welsh attacked Woodland Castle several times. Llewellyn ap Grufford had a go, and Maddock ap Llewellyn. The most successful was Owain ap Grufford. He actually managed to knacker up the town of Rhuddlan, but he didn't manage to take the castle. So you might be wondering, who did knacker the castle? Well, it was the same fella that knackered Flint Castle, Oliver Cromwell. Back in 1646, Oliver didn't want to give the Royals anywhere to hide, so he was destroying castles. He ordered that the castle be slighted, which is old-fashioned talk for knackered. And 2 years after, he ordered that part of the castle be demolished, so that it would be of no strategic advantage to the Royals. And that's how it's been left up until today. Knackered. It's not the only castle that was built in the area though. There's Tote Hill Castle. Tote means lookout, so it was called Lookout Hill Castle. And it was built in 1073 by Robert of Rhuddlan. He was a warlord acting on behalf of the Earl of Chester. I always imagine him being played by Brian Blessed. Robert of Rhuddlan was actually killed on the beach at Llandudno. Welsh raiders had beached the ships on the shores of Llandudno, and they were stealing and pillaging everything from the township. And Robert of Rhuddlan was having a little afternoon nap in the Gamway Castle, which we've bimbled to before. When he was told that the Welsh were raiding, he sent out for his troops, but they took too long to come. And Robert could see that the tide was coming in, which would allow the Welsh raiders' ships to refloat and allow him to get away with all of his stuff. So with only the help of his armour bearer, Robert ran down from the hill at Gamway to fight the Welsh raiders on his own. And he was killed by what was described as a volley of javelins, which seemed like an awful way to go. On top of that, the Welsh raiders chopped off his head and put it on top of the mast of the ship. Nice lads like. I know this is only our second portage, but how do you fancy a little detour? I thought you might say that. Let's bimble.
And dance to the good news. Broken smiles, well, they will turn it round. So take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Left too long in the passing time. You know what you know to be true. ignored what I read, and looked to the bright side. So here's to the bad times forgotten in good lives. I won't let you down. I won't let you down. I'll take off.
This is the city of St Asaph, and it's the second smallest city in the UK. It was a city from medieval times, but after the reformation of the churches by Henry VIII, it was a little bit forgotten about. And it wasn't until 2012, during the Queen's Jubilee, that it became a city again. It has a population of just over 3,000, and the city centre is only half a mile square. But that's over double the size of the smallest city in the UK. That's St David's in Pembrokeshire. But size isn't everything. It's what you do with it that counts. The cathedral at St Asaph houses one of the oldest Welsh Bibles, and it was the same Bible that was used when they crowned Prince Charles the Prince of Wales. It sired such luminaries as moustache footballer Ian Rush. If you've ever wondered why Ian Rush used to play for Wales but spoke with a Scouse accent, it was because he was born here. It was two brothers from St Asaph that wrote the song "Pack Up Your Troubles in Your Old Kit Bag." That was George and Felix Powell, and in fact George went by the pen name George Asaph. Just a little nod to his hometown. And it was also the birthplace of Lisa Scott Lee from Steps. I probably should have done those last two the other way round. A young lady I know called Francesca says that I should watch a documentary about Lisa Scott Lee and how she failed to become a mega pop star. I always preferred Faye from Steps anyway.
Take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Take off your shoes and dance to the good news. So here's to the bad times forgotten in good lives. I won't let you down. I won't let you down. I'll take off my shoes and dance to the good news. Broken smiles, but they won't turn it round. So take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Take off your shoes and dance to the good news. Take off your shoes and dance to the good news.
Well, Bimblers, that was our detour to Asaph, and it took loads longer than I thought it would. So we best get a quick bimble on to our next portage. It's that way somewhere.
Big plans are easiest to make. Aim for the stars, it's yours, just wait. You do your best along the way. But it's those arms that told me I don't care if it's yours or mine. Without you, it's just a waste of time. You showed me from the start. Such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be ours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you down. Though some get lost along the way, as sure as night designed the day. As long as I'm allowed to say, it's my heart that told me I don't care, you just disagree.
This is Disseth Waterfall, and it's actually the River Fidian that falls 70 foot off the edge of a cliff before flowing off to Rhyl. We actually seen the River Fidian flowing into the River Clewwood earlier on in the Bimble. Next to Disseth Waterfall are two giant stone walls, which were believed to hold up a giant water wheel. And that was no doubt used to pump out water from the nearby lead mines, the Talagok lead mines. With the hills around here being made out of limestone, water would flow down all the little cracks and fissures, and it would come from rainfall and the River Fidian, and it would all accumulate at the bottom of the lead mines. The water wheel was just one way of pumping out the water, but they came up with a much bigger and better solution in a giant pumping house which still exists just down the road, called the Clive engine house. It used to house a giant steam engine which is now long gone, but the building that housed it is still there and worth a look. If you're interested in the lead mines of Disseth, you should go and watch the videos of Andy Outdoors. He's rather the expert on it. Disseth is actually quite a nice little village, and it was actually mentioned in the Domesday Book of 1086, but it was listed as being part of Cheshire. I think I should reclaim it in the name of Cheshire. WA4 Massive Assemble. Up until 1973, they had a railway that went up to the top of the hill here at Disseth, and that came from Prestatin station. It was originally made to get all the limestone from the quarries round here, but the Victorians, being the Victorians, they sensed some leisure activities out of the railway, and they used it to get up to the top of the hill and come and visit Disseth Waterfall. And now the railway is closed, it's a lovely cycle path for us bimblers. Speaking of which, let's bimble.
From the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be yours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you. I don't care, you can say what you like. I'm a peace-loving person, but I know I'm right. It's as easy as right from wrong. I'm a lover, not a fighter, so I wrote this song. You showed me from the start. Such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be yours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you down. From the start, such inspirations need a heart to bring you round. It could be yours. Big aspirations need a heart to hold you, heart to hold you down.
You join me on a very unassuming cul-de-sac called Mellies Avenue, and in between two of the houses is this Roman bathhouse. It was discovered on March the 30th of 1934 by a Mr. F. Gilbert Smith, and it was all supposed to be built in around 120 AD. Mr. Gilbert Smith was a keen amateur archaeologist, and he managed to get the attention of Chester University, who did 2 digs here before the Second World War put a stop to all that kind of thing for a bit. And it was all covered back over, and it wasn't redug up until the 1980s. After that dig, Woodland Council landscaped it and made it into a little bit of an attraction. However, it doesn't attract that many people. That's probably something to do with it having no signs pointing you towards it. It's believed that there's a lot more Roman artefacts around here, including bigger buildings. But apparently a building company are going to build 25 new houses on top of it. So fingers crossed they do a dig before they build them.
Maybe it didn't work at the time, maybe it never did. A mistake that made the distance, or a trying way to live. Maybe it's the time that you grabbed at my arms and electricity flowed from my shoulders to palms in a white hot glow, leaving white cold scars left bare and on show just to prove they were ours. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how...
And so we reached Prestatin, the last stop on our loop. And I could do with this sit down. It's been quite eventful, hasn't it? The nice weather's come out. Now it's nearly the end of the video. But we're in lovely Prestatin. And Prestatin's name was originally Priest Town. And over the years it got a bit Welshified and different people wrote it down and different people said it and it became Prestatin. Which is actually the same thing that happened to Preston. That was called Priest Town as well. But if you think about Preston, it sounds like someone from Lancashire saying Priest Town. And if you're a southern softy cartographer and you hear someone with a thick Lancashire accent say Priest Town, you'd be forgiven for thinking he said Preston. Prestatin is famous as a holiday resort and it has been since the Victorian era. And its most famous place to stay is Pontins. Pontins was started in 1946 by Fred Pontin. And he bought an old army base, a US army base. And he built a holiday camp on it. And if you think about holiday camps, they kind of are like army bases. Nobody can get in. It's communal eating, it's communal entertainment. Everyone has their own little barracks. It's all regimented activities. In 1980, Pontins was bought by Coral. They're the people who do the betting shops. And then in turn, Coral was bought by Bass Brewing. They're the people who made Shandy Bass. Bring back Shandy Bass. Where's it gone? I would love a can of Shandy Bass right now. The claim to fame of the Pontins in Prestatin is that it was the filming location for the 1973 film Holiday on the Buses, which was a spin-off film from the TV series On the Buses. On that note, I think we should bimble to Rhyl. Get that bark out, butler.
Left bare and on show just to prove they were ours. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it didn't work at the time, maybe it never did. A novelty improvement, left lonely as it gives. Or maybe it's the time that you closed both your eyes and you pouted your lips as you waited for mine in the soft red glow of your soft cold arms. Serotonin burnt holes through my veins to my heart. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it's the time that I wanted to say that my limbs won't move more than 2 feet away from your day glow side, luminescent sparks. I could burst into flames from one beat from your heart. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. Maybe it worked, maybe it never did, maybe it never was quite like how it is. And I quite like how it is.
Well, Bimblers, we're back where we started. It's took me ages, but it probably won't take you ages. It was around about 15 miles for the loop, plus that little detour of 6 miles to go to St Asaph. And it only leaves one thing to say, and that's adios, goodbye, au revoir. Happy bimbling.